This webinar is organized by LIBER, as you know, and basically by the Steering Committee, Scholarly Communication and Research Infrastructures. And yeah, we are organizing a series on research data management and are happy to welcome you to our today's topic on 23 things for research data. We have two speakers today. First of all, Michael Witt, who is an associate professor of library science and also a manager at the library and Purdue University, and also Natasha Simmons, who's a senior research data management specialist at the Australian National Data Service in Australia. So one thing from the organizational point of view, we have planned about a 30 to 40 minutes duration of this webinar, and please be aware that you can step in through the chat. So we will collect your questions and come back to these questions after, and the webinar is recorded. So yeah, that's basically it. And yeah, we were happy that we have had a lot of registrations for this webinar. It was again fully booked. Yeah, and so I hope you will enjoy the presentation, and yeah, the floor is yours, Michael. And yeah, let's start.
Thank you very much, Birgit, and also Friedel and Rob and all of our good colleagues at LIBER. I'm Michael Witt from Purdue University in the United States in Indiana, where it is 6 o'clock in the morning. So forgive me if I'm pausing every once in a while to sip my coffee and kind of wake up. On the other end of this time spectrum, Natasha Simmons is at the end of her day. So this is, of course, the nature of working internationally and approaching librarianship from a global perspective. The two worst qualities are time differences and, of course, when we have to travel for airports and conferences and that kind of thing, and jet lag. So the nice thing about this webinar is we only have to deal with only have to negotiate the time zones. Nobody has to get on an airplane, which is lovely. So we have 23 things for research data, and what we'll do today is we'll present kind of two takes on the 23 things. I'll spend about 10 minutes to talk about the 23 things libraries for research data that came out of the Research Data Alliance about a year and a half ago, and then turn things over to Natasha to talk about the great work they've done with the Australian National Data Service and making that a much more robust training program. But kind of looking back in time, about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, IFLA, the International Federation of Library Associations, was having their conference in South Africa. And there were discussions about the Research Data Alliance and IFLA putting together a joint program on how to help libraries engage in research data management, research data curation. And so we're brainstorming, ways to approach this for that particular audience, and came up with this idea of, let's do a survey. Let's look at kind of the landscape of what's available in terms of resources that are online, that are free, that come from different important players in this space, and that are are delivered in different kinds of ways. And let's try to pull together a list that we can give as like a handout. And so how many of these things can we pick that would be somewhat representative of what's out there and could fit on a single piece of paper on the front and back of a sheet that we can hand out at the conference and help librarians become familiar with, what is really kind of a complex landscape of research data management. And so that was kind of the genesis of the original 23 things, was a handout format. So how many things can fit on the front and back of a handout? And of course, it's not comprehensive. It really is just kind of a window into the different resources that are available out there. And so you may not see your favorite resource listed on here, and you shouldn't take that as a slight. This isn't a top 10 list in any sense. It was just our attempt at the time to try to pull together a useful introduction to the topic. And so in that spirit, in this format of the webinar, you all have the 23 Things Libraries for Research Data PDF, or you can access it through the links down in the lower right-hand corner. If we're going through the program today and there is a resource that you're aware of that's helped you, or maybe you've helped develop a resource that you would like to share with colleagues, I'd really encourage you to go ahead and put it in the chat window as we're talking with a link. And I think that, in addition to what Natasha and I will be presenting, if we also have your contributions by the end of this webinar, it'll be a much better list and be helpful for other people who reference this recording and these resources later. I also understand that there may be a blog post that kind of sums up the webinar, and this would be a nice supplement to that. So as we're going along, if there's a resource that you're aware of that you want to share with the group, please go ahead and plug it into the chat window. And so what I feel is that this is actually a very exciting time to be a librarian. There is so much a tremendous need for what we bring from our professional practice to helping address challenges in research data management and applying the principles of library science to these problems of the data deluge, of data preservation, of pulling together purposeful collections of data, of connecting researchers to data repositories to deposit their data, and data management planning, in the classification and description of data sets, in incorporating data into information literacy outreach and instruction, and helping to train the next generation of scholars to be not only data literate, but to be mindful of their research and the data that they're generating as part of the scholarly record. So these are all things that are part of librarianship that we have been practicing for centuries. We've just been focused on paper and on more traditional formats, monographs, periodicals, conference proceedings, and these kinds of things that have been paper in the past and have become digital, but now we're looking at non-traditional formats for scholarly communication, which include things like software and research data sets. And so we put together this program for the IFLA conference, and this handout came out of the Research Data Alliance and was distributed later in its plenary meeting, which includes an interest group for librarians, the Libraries for Research Data Interest Group. And then kind of a cool thing happened. The next plenary meeting was in Tokyo, Japan, and so we had the 23 things translated into Japanese. And while we were at the plenary meeting, on Twitter, someone volunteered to translate it into Spanish. And then another person volunteered to translate it into Portuguese, and so on. And so we're to a point now where I think we have the 23 things in 11 different languages, which is really cool. It's a nice impact. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of walk through the 23 things very briefly with you, just a 5-minute kind of flyover, and then turn it over to Natasha. So there are these 9 different areas of things, and this is just to kind of help a librarian who may not be familiar with this space become familiar with learning resources, become familiar with data reference and outreach, DMPs and data management plans, data literacy, data citation, issues related to licensing and privacy that pertain to data, digital preservation and long-term stewardship of data, data repositories, and also how librarians are coming together through different venues such as this one here with LIBER to build communities of practice. And so the first of the 8 assertions is that librarians are learning how to apply the principles of library science to solve problems and provide new services related to research data. And the number one thing that we list is, of course, the LIBER top 10 recommendations for libraries in getting started. There's also a very cool thesaurus, an e-science thesaurus that came out from the University of Massachusetts, which gives you kind of a concept map of different areas related to research data management and different subtopics, which is useful for just kind of seeing the broad landscape. And then it's also worth mentioning there's a great taxonomy by Foster in Europe that presents a similar kind of resource. The third thing that we list is the DCC curation lifecycle model. I think everybody has probably seen this before. If you haven't, it's a great introductory resource to be thinking about the research lifecycle and at what points in that life cycle there are needs for curation, and to extrapolate from that to be thinking about what library services you can provide at different points in that life cycle to support research and to support data curation. There are a number of different training modules that are online. One example is Mantra. Another great example will be talked about in the second half of the presentation by Natasha, which is the 23 things, 23 research data things, which is a self-guided program. There's Charles Bailey Jr. maintains a digital curation bibliography that is updated periodically. That's worth looking to get a sense of the breadth of scholarship and publications that are related to digital curation and in different important journals and such. And then also, as librarians, many of us create resource guides for our patrons, whether you call them library guides or LibGuides or resource guides. These are usually web-based, and they introduce patrons to a topic and what the literature and what the important resources are on a particular topic. And if you go to the one example is the SpringShare LibGuide community site. If you go to this site, you will find tens of thousands of LibGuides that have been shared by librarians, and you'll find dozens that have been written on the topic of data curation, data management planning, and you can see the way that other librarians have presented this topic to their patrons. And this is, this network of LibGuides is set up in such a way to encourage sharing. So it's real easy to repurpose content, and it's actually encouraged so that you don't have to reinvent the wheel. So if you're thinking about putting together a LibGuide on data management for your campus or for your research community, this is a great place to go and look and see how other librarians have approached that. So that's the first thing, learning resources for librarians and research data. What we also see is that librarians are getting out of the library and going out to their campus, going out to the centers, going out to labs, and they're doing essentially what amounts to outreach and reference. So you think about libraries and reference transactions, how you sit down with a researcher who has a need, and he or she may not even really be able to articulate that need in a very direct way. But part of the craft of reference is being able to ask open-ended questions and leading questions and kind of pull this information out of the researcher to understand, what their information need is and how to best connect them to information to resolve that need. So this idea of having reference conversations with researchers and with students. And so some resources to help in this area. There's 10 questions that you can ask to conduct a data interview. So if you have the opportunity to spend 5 or 10 minutes with a researcher, here are 10 good questions to start with in conducting a data interview. If you have more time than that, if you have the opportunity to sit down and do kind of a more in-depth interview, then you may take use of the data curation profiles. The data curation profile is a toolkit that is more extensive and lets you dive deeper into researcher data needs and to be able to organize those, to be able to better evaluate how you can help that researcher. And also, these data curation profiles have been conducted and shared by other librarians. And so if you're going to approach a new discipline, a new domain, like say agronomy, and you want to see maybe some other librarian has done a data curation profile with an agronomist, which might give you some insight and give you some information that would be helpful to prepare for that outreach. So there are different organizations that have put together outreach kits. Number 9 is an example from Data One, which is terrific. And then the last resource that we present is DataQ. And so DataQ is kind of like Stack Overflow for libraries and data. So if you get a question that's a really tough question and you can't answer it, you can go to these guys at DataQ and submit the question to them, and they have a panel of experts and a structured process for vetting your question, trying to help answer it for you. So this is one of the great things about the library profession, is the collegiality and how we pull together in many cases to try and help each other serve our patrons and their questions. So those are some examples of data reference and outreach. Of course, many of us are seeing increased interest in data management because of funder requirements. The idea that you have to write a data management plan and submit it with your grant proposal and tell your funder what data you'll be generating and how you'll be organizing and describing that data, how you'll be disseminating the data, and how you'll be sharing and archiving it. And there are some great online tools to help researchers and to help librarians help researchers formulate data management plans. Two examples would be the DMP tool in the United States and DMP Online in the UK and in Europe. So there are also many librarians who are instructing students, who are teaching classes, and who are doing information literacy outreach and instruction. And when I read the competencies for information literacy, I feel like you could almost take the word information and replace it with the word data, and all of the same tenets still ring true. So helping patrons articulate their need for data, helping them to find data to satisfy that need, helping them to evaluate the data to see if they trust it and if it's fit for their purpose, and then to have them use the data in a responsible and ethical way, and to attribute credit for the data producers. So this idea of data information literacy, and there are some good books that are available on this topic, and the Data Information Literacy Project website is linked here, among other resources for data literacy. And then, of course, the classification, description, and documentation of data through metadata is part of a rich tradition of librarianship. And if you're looking to apply the same skill set to research data, one question that you may have is what are appropriate schemata or standards? And so this resource, the Metadata Standards Directory, began with excellent work at the DCC and has migrated over to the RDA and is available for you to query, so you can help researchers adopt and use appropriate descriptive standards for describing their data. And then, of course, we want to promote the scholarship of data, and one great way of doing that is by presenting your data in a way that's citable and to encourage the citation of data. And so there is an international organization called DataCite, this is part of their mission and purpose. And one of the practical ways that they approach this is by enabling the minting and managing of digital object identifiers, or DOIs, for data sets, to present them in a scholarly context so that they'll be citable. And to date, they've minted approximately 7 million DOIs for data sets and other scholarly outputs. So this has emerged as a best practice and has really taken off. And so we have the link to the DataCite website, where they have not only a description of the organization and the service, but other good resources and events related to data citation. Data licensing and privacy is kind of another area that has a lot of kind of sticky issues involved. So how do you protect human subjects? How do you guard sensitive and restricted data or controlled data? And so here we give two resources. One is the excellent tutorial how to license research data from the DCC, and also JISC manages a mailing list called Data Protection, where you can go through and search the archives of past questions and discussions that researchers, librarians, data managers have posed and have pondered relating to, what are kind of the practical concerns. What data can you share? How much of the data can you share? What workflows and what systems need to be in place to protect sensitive data, and also to maintain regulatory compliance. So those are two good resources in data licensing and privacy. Also, librarians and archivists have been stewards of knowledge and thinking about preserving digital data, much in the same way we preserve and maintain our collections over the long term. And this is an area where, we work with information technology and with computer science, but where their concerns may be more about availability or maybe kind of more short-term backups and such. Libraries are really taking a very long view of data stewardship. So how can we ingest data and prepare data and maintain those data to be available not just next week or next year, but in 5 years, in 10 years, in 20 years, in 50 years into the future. It's a huge challenge, but there are a number of good resources available. There's the OIS reference model. There are trustworthy digital repository certifications like ISO 16363 and the data seal of approval that gives some guidance in this area. And then another resource I think that probably doesn't get as much that people don't talk about as much, but is really excellent is Copter. And so Copter is a registry of digital preservation tools, and they have hundreds of these tools that you can use in conjunction with your archivist, in conjunction with your data center and repository to prepare and help you preserve digital data. So Copter is an excellent resource. One of the questions that we get often from researchers, especially when they're confronted with having to write a data management plan for the first time, is where can I deposit my data? What repositories are out there? And so a good resource here that I'm one of the principal investigators for is Re3Data, which is the Registry of Research Data Repositories. And so along with German colleagues, we maintain a registry of data repositories that you can search and find the most appropriate repository to meet your need, to deposit a data set, to access data for research and learning, to track data outputs resulted from funded research. And this is services operated by DataSite. And then also, there are really an increasing number of free online data repositories where, as a researcher or as a librarian, you can reference a research or two to use without any cost to them. So things like Figshare, Zenodo, the Open Science Framework, Dataverse, there are many others. But these kinds of free, open, online, easy to use repositories may be an option in particular for researchers who don't have an institutional data repository, don't have a local data archive, or don't have a disciplinary repository that's appropriate for them to use. And so last but not least, librarians are coming together to build communities of practice. And I think Natasha is going to talk about the Australian National Data Service and how this has happened really in a beautiful way in Australia, and how they've been able to pull together librarians and help them build skills and provide infrastructure and a forum for advancing the scholarship of data at a national level in Australia. And then, of course, there are many great conferences that include focus on research data curation or have tracks. So things like the International Digital Curation Conference, RDAP, the Research Data Access and Preservation Summit, IASSIST, which came out of the social science community, and the Research Data Alliance, and of course groups like this one here in LIBER. And so I want to put in a quick plug for the Research Data Alliance. I am the co-chair of the Libraries for Research Data Interest Group, and we meet twice a year at the plenary meetings of the RDA. The next meeting is coming up. It's the 9th plenary, April 5th through the 7th in Barcelona. And so you may look, the program has been posted online to see what's on the docket for the libraries group at RDA. And then what I joke about with Natasha is that after you've done all of these 23 things, and it's been a full day or it's been a full week, the 24th thing is to drink a beer, or as the case will be for me, to take another sip of coffee. And so I hope that this has introduced you to this resource, this 23 things, which is a handout. And what I'd like to do is turn things over to my colleague Natasha Simons at ANS to talk about how these guys have really taken a more pedagogical approach to 23 things have made a much more robust and engaging training program for librarians, which is the 23 Things for Research Data Management out of ANS. Thanks, Natasha. I'll turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you, Michael, for outlining the excellent work of the RDA Libraries for Research Data Interest Group in developing the 23 Things and also the reasons behind why it was developed. I can tell you that it's just after 9 p.m. on a hot summer's day here, so thing number 24, the beer, would be pretty good about now. But it's great to be connecting with colleagues in the Northern Hemisphere, and if any of you are coming to the Open Repositories Conference in Brisbane this year, please say hello, because I'm in Brisbane, it's my hometown, and I'll be there. I'd love to welcome you here. So as Michael said, in this presentation, I'm going to outline the 23 Research Data Things program, which was developed by the Australian National Data Service, or ANS as we're better known, including how you can reuse and repurpose the program wherever you are in the world to suit your needs. So in Australia, we were very inspired by the RDA 23 Things. We liked the self-paced learning style of the program. We thought the examples were very relevant and enabled a combination of thinking and doing exercises. And we liked the way the things were grouped around particular data management topics. So last year, ANS developed our own program, which drew on the RDA 23 Things, and we called our program 23 Research Data Things. The ANS program was designed to build capability and a community of practice around research data management. The program itself was open to anyone interested in learning more about data management, though the target group was librarians and research support staff. So as Michael said, research data management is a natural extension of the skills of librarians in managing information, but many librarians find it a challenging and somewhat scary new area. They want to learn more about research data management so they can provide a better service to researchers. But the question is, how can they go about it? How can they learn more? And the ANS program offered them such an opportunity. So the program expanded on the RDA model by challenging participants to do 23 things that would build their confidence and experience with research data management. Participants were asked to undertake one thing per week and to complete all 23 things over a 9-month period. There were some scheduled break weeks to allow time for people to take a breath or catch up. There was no program sign-up and no pressure for participants to do all of the 23 things, so some simply chose to do the things that were of interest to them. ANS 23 Things was intended to be a hands-on learning program. So as they worked through each of the 23 things, participants were encouraged to share their questions, ideas and learnings with others involved in the program through a variety of mediums. We had a dedicated online discussion forum where participants could post their thoughts and reply to other people's posts. For some of the things, ANS organised a guest expert to monitor the forum and reply to tricky questions, for example, those around data licensing topics. There were local community groups that formed around the 23 Things program and met face-to-face each week to discuss the latest topic. These were often very energetic meetings, and they also often involved tea, home-baked cake, and a guest speaker on the topic. ANS also put on regular webinars that enabled participants to exchange ideas, especially where they didn't have a local community group meeting to attend. And social media was, of course, a very popular medium for sharing reflections on the 23 Things program. And there was a regular stream of posts to Twitter, and some participants chose to blog their learnings and then post the link to their blog on the Twitter stream. 23 Research Data Things was supported by the Australian Library and Information Association and the Council of Australian University Librarians. ALIA is the professional association for Australian librarians, and CALL supports librarians at university libraries. The support of these two organisations was very important because, in particular, it helped librarians who wanted to undertake the program to get support from their managers to do so. The bookmarks and stickers were very popular, of course, and bunches of these were sent out to community group leaders to distribute. ANS also facilitated regular catch-ups of community group leaders to help support them and enable information exchange. Anne's put on 23 things crash courses and sprints to the finish that were face-to-face workshops in various cities, and I'll come back to these shortly. Like the RDA model, the 23 things are grouped into several topics, including rights, ethics and sensitive data, repositories for data, metadata and crosswalks, data citation, and data impact. To accommodate a variety of capabilities and learning styles, a choice of 3 activities was provided for each thing. The time it took to complete each thing therefore varied widely. It could be half an hour or it could be a lot longer, depending on how much time you wanted to dedicate to it. And each thing was offered at 3 different levels. There was getting started, know more, or challenge me. So participants could choose to do each thing at the level that they felt suited them best. And some people chose to do 1 level, and some people chose to do all 3 levels. Once the thing had been completed, a participant could claim an online Credly badge if they wanted to. These were actually very popular, with over 3,000 claimed through the course of the program. And the Credly badges were also printed as stickers, and these were equally as popular. So for each thing, participants were asked to read something, critique a video, explore a website or database, try a new tool, and so on. They were then asked questions that prompted them to reflect on what they had read, watched, explored, or tried, and asked to share their answers in the mediums I mentioned earlier, so through the online forums, the community groups, social media, webinars, or crash courses. Rich discussions took place on a variety of topics, and it was good to see that not only were questions answered, but new questions were also raised, showing participants were really engaging with the topics and wanting to learn more deeply. The local community groups, which met face-to-face, enabled participants to exchange ideas with others who had similar experiences and goals. This facilitated contextualised learning, where they considered how each thing applied in the context of the real world. Crash courses were open to anyone, and therefore people from different institutions came together in one-on-one face-to-face courses to discuss the 23 things. The crash courses covered things 1 to 12, and the sprints to the finish covered things 13 to 23. We would generally divide the room into those who had completed some of the 23 things and those who had not yet started. The ones who had not yet started were taken through introductory concepts by an ANN staff member in combination with the self-paced activities of the 23 things. Those who had already started the 23 things either used the time to do more of the things or talk through their thoughts with the group. And usually a researcher would be invited as a guest speaker, and this person really brought data management to life with real-world data management challenges. The crash courses and sprints created a space for quick learning of the 23 things, and this was appreciated by many, as finding the time to keep pace with the program and do one thing each week was often challenging for participants. Community participation in the ANN's 23 Things program was beyond our wildest dreams. Nearly 1,000 people signed up for the kick-off webinar. There were 49 local community groups that formed. 623 people signed up for Meetup, which was our online discussion forum, and there were over 13,000 views of posts on the Meetup boards. Around 1,500 people subscribed to the fortnightly e-newsletter, which Anne sent out to encourage each new thing, to announce each new thing, and to announce activities around the 23 Things program. So 23 Research Data Things was truly embraced by a global community. Nearly 1,000 people from over 10 countries registered for that initial kick-off webinar where we explained the program. So this map is a little outdated, but it shows members of the 600-strong Meetup community. And we can see that there's lots of locations in Australia and a good spread across New Zealand. And there's activity elsewhere in the English-speaking world, with a couple of participants in Asia, Middle East and Africa. And more were added as the program progressed from the USA, Germany and other European countries. I would say that one thing that really came across in feedback from participants was that the fun they had in doing the program. They liked the ways they could engage with the topics and with each other. They liked the range of resources that were used in the program, the videos, documents, tools, data records, and so on. They liked that the examples used covered a variety of research disciplines and that they could choose which of the things they wanted to do and at what level they wanted to do them. Some felt that the program gave them more confidence to engage with researchers at their institution on data management, and for others, it sparked a desire to become a data librarian. It's clear from participant feedback that the program was a success. What was also clear to us is that long-sustained change in the community requires a program that is not just online, but that has multiple ways in which people can engage. The community groups, webinar catch-ups, and crash courses, for example, were a real hit. What did managers think? Well, the views of managers are actually a key thing. The program might be great for individuals, but what would investment in this program result in? As the 23 Things program came to a close, a survey of managers revealed that 39% of respondents indicated they had plans in place to expand the level of library staff participation in research data management. 33% had no plans at that time, and 72% of respondents intend to continue supporting professional development opportunities in research data management for their library staff. We have yet to see how the effects of the program on libraries whose staff participated in it will evolve. While participating staff feel more confident in talking to researchers about data management issues, how many libraries will adjust their services to take advantage of the new knowledge gained? The shift of individual capability has been extensive. Several participants commented that they were able to develop their data management skills because the program was free, online, flexible, and multi-level. And a survey of participants revealed that more than 80% of respondents now regard themselves as knowledgeable or very knowledgeable, which is up from just over 10% at the beginning of the program. 30% are now confident enough to apply for positions involving research data, and 13% are considering enrolling in a university course to get a formal data qualification. This represents a timely opportunity for managers to leverage newly developed skills and confidence to implement or further develop research data management support services. While the 23 Things program came to a close in November last year, the good news is that we have developed a repurposed toolkit. The possibilities for repurposing the 23 Things are endless. The materials developed can be used however you wish, to develop for new users and audiences, or to meet specific institutional, discipline, or community needs. A range of materials from the program are available on the ANZ website and are licensed CC BY, so you can reuse them as you wish. There are a lot of ways in which the program could be reused. You could use the master file of all 23 things. This includes all of the Getting Started, Learn More, and Challenge Me activities to reuse and edit. But a warning that this is 69 pages long. You're welcome to contextualise 23 things for your discipline. For example, the top 10 things for medical and health is now available on the ANZ website. You could put on a crash course or a sprint to the finish course, and we've made it easy by making available a run sheet with suggested timings, resources, and activities. You could customise 23 things for your institution by including your own services and examples and picking the things most relevant to your staff. You could also select a few things that could be offered perhaps as a 1-hour workshop. These are just a few ideas for how you can use the ANZ 23 Research Data Things program wherever you are in the world. If you do choose to reuse or repurpose the materials, we would like you to let us know so that we can share your good work with the community. So in closing, I'd like to acknowledge that ANZ is funded by the Australian Government through the National Collaborative Research Infrastructure Strategy Program. And if you'd like to get in touch with me, you're welcome to do so via email or Twitter. So thank you for listening, and thank you to LIBER for the opportunity to share our experiences with all of you.
Thanks, Natasha and Michael, for sharing your experiences and delivering a great presentation. We now open the floor for a few questions from the audience. So if you have any questions, please type them in and we will discuss them here. We've prepared a few questions already. Let's start with the first. Michael and Natasha. To start with Michael, you have put together an extensive list of practical tips. Which ones have been most popular? And to Natasha, so from which experiences are most critical for future activities?
That's a good question, Rob. And you know, we made the decision to normalize the URLs to the resources through Bitly, and this gives the ability to track how many times people have clicked them. But I have to confess, I haven't actually gone back to see which ones are more popular, which ones have been clicked the most. I'm not sure. I mean, part of the landscape of all these issues is complex enough that I think that it's the real value is in kind of bringing these things together and kind of an overview together. So I hadn't really thought about one resource jumping to the top of the list or what have you. So I don't have a good answer for your question. But now that you've asked it, I'll go back and check the Bitly stats because I'm kind of curious myself.
Okay, thanks. Natasha?
Yes, I think some of the earlier exercises around some basic introductory concepts about what is research data were popular just because people began to start the program in a linear way. But then things showed that people were very interested in metadata crosswalks, and data discovery. They were some of our more popular of the 23 things.
Okay, thanks. Let's see if we have, there's some question coming in, I think, from Emily Hermans. Let's wait and see what she has as a question. Multiple attendees are typing, so.
Well, while they're typing, I'll just say that there was a lot of discussion around research data management plans. That was one area that sparked a bit of interesting discussion about how effective they are and whether they should be public or private. Those sort of things that are starting to be discussed internationally about how you can make them machine readable and so forth.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say that many libraries are still in a place where they're trying to figure out what services are being provided that they, by other libraries that they might look at as examples for things that they could do or that they should be doing, and to evaluate their own capabilities. So I think it's it's great to have the resources to learn, kind of the standards and the training and that kind of thing. But I think that another good step to go a little bit further is to look at practical examples. So look at some of the academic and research libraries that have begun to roll out these services. How do they present those services to users? Because it's not, believe it or not, it's not intuitive for a researcher who has a question about research data to think, I should go to my librarian, or I should go to my libraries. And so there's a challenge here, not in just building these skills and figuring out how we extend these principles to research data, but also how you define those services and how you articulate them to your user community.
Right. Yeah. Well, several questions are coming in. I assume Natasha and Michael, you can read them. There's the question from Tiberius to start with. Does someone have the practice of designing a training program for a medium-sized research-intensive university? How many data stewards are needed? Roles? How is it designed to run all the researchers group into such a program? Do you have experience with? Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say I come from a research extensive university at Purdue, and we have a dedicated research data unit within our libraries. This isn't. There are different organizational models for approaching research data services out of libraries, but ours is that we have a dedicated unit of 6 people, and team within libraries also collaborates very closely with our research computing on campus, with our research office, and our sponsored program services, who administers the submission of grant proposals and tracking grant proposals and ensuring compliance with funder mandates. And so what we've tried to do is look at that curation lifecycle model and think about where do we have different places where librarians or library services or library collections can help. And so we have 6 folks who are dedicated full-time to supporting things like data management plan consultations, teaching data information literacy, supporting our data site implementation, minting DOIs for data sets, providing an institutional data repository service that's campus-based, that's for our university. But then even 6 people is a pretty well-resourced unit for a library to have. But even then, we still have to rely on our subject specialist librarians. In our particular university, we have a chemistry librarian, we have a humanities librarian, and those librarians really are the ones who are on the front lines, who are embedded in the different academic departments. And we also, our research data unit, one of our principal aspects is in supporting them, and they're doing these things for their particular communities on campus, because they all these different departments, they have a different view of what constitutes data. They have different levels of awareness and acceptance of open data and data sharing. But most of them are having to deal with it now because of the funder mandates. And so we have our subject specialist librarians, who are essentially kind of deputies, if you will, who are we're supporting them in many cases. But that's just how we're organized at my university. There are lots of other different models at different places.
Thanks, Michael, for this elaboration. Please add to that, Natasha.
Yes, thank you. I can't comment on the specifics in the way that Michael has, because I don't work for a particular university. But I think what Michael said is that research data services are collaborative in nature at an institution, so they don't just involve a library service, but they also involve a library connecting with information technology, with Office for Research, with ethics and so forth, to provide a service across the institution for all of its researchers. And I think these services vary in size, and in the way that they're set up. And the life cycle model is a really good way to look at what infrastructure you have, where you have infrastructure and no services, where you have services and no infrastructure, and also to look at what is available locally and nationally as well to fill those gaps. And some of these models are just really developing. They just vary so widely between institutions, and some institutions do have just one dedicated data librarian, and sometimes that person is actually only on half-time. And sometimes there are subject librarians that across the board that know about data, rather than having one librarian have all that knowledge. So there's a lot of different models there, and I don't think there's one that's to rule them all at this point.
Okay. Let me see. I'm scrolling to the next questions.
I mean, Tiberius' questions was a little more into asking how to roll out such a training program to all researchers, not only the support staff. I think you kind of overlooked this. Is there any experiences on this, Michael? I mean, in terms of training larger groups of researchers?
Yeah, good question. So of course, we do try to do this. We have regular workshops with our research office on particular topics that are pressing needs for researchers that relate to data. So data management planning has probably been principal among them, where we'll have an hour-and-a-half session with speakers from libraries and from the research office, and coffee and cookies and that kind of thing, and talk about how to write an effective data management plan. Another area that has been where we've invested has been in graduate students, in particular doctoral students in their final year when they prepare their dissertation. We have an orientation where we go and talk about what are you doing with your data? I know your focus is on the thesis and the document and defending it, but try to encourage them to create a project in our repository, a data repository, to invite their advisors and their committee to it, and to publish their data and cite it in their dissertation. So those are some examples, and of course our subject librarians are incorporating data into their information literacy instruction, so classes they teach on information literacy. And in many cases, working with the students is also gives you some entry to working with the faculty. In some cases, it may be difficult for librarians to get invited to faculty department meetings in different departments, or have even the opportunity to have some of these conversations about research data. And it varies from department to department, but that's part of the outreach effort of our unit in the libraries, is to help our researchers better understand these issues, and not just promoting our own library services, but just promoting good practice as it relates to data.
Yeah. I think, thank you, Michael. I think we have more questions that we'll be able to answer, but we aim for answering the questions through our website later. There's, I see two additional questions. One from Eva, which I think is interesting. She says, how about the relation of the librarian-related services and other data professionals like data scientists, etc. How could we, so what is next to develop the profession and the relation between these different colors of people working with data? How to link up the different professions, and how to align the different competencies and skills and things that are needed. Could you say something about that, Michael, to start with?
Sure. So from an institutional perspective, from being a university library, I think probably this is really challenging to do this kind of linking up, because there are these pockets of expertise. My university is a big place, and I've been here 15 years, and every month I discover some new pocket of activity, some research center that's managing its own data, or some new initiative, and so it's a lot to keep up with. So I think there's a challenge here, and that's kind of understanding who the players are in your particular context, what their expertise and experience are to apply to the problem, but then also what is their motivation. And one of the great things I think about the library is that I think we have an opportunity. We're kind of uniquely positioned to be, for lack of a better word, kind of a concierge to these kinds of things. Because a researcher, if they have a specific immediate need, I have this need for data analytics for my study, or I need to submit a data management plan to a funder, or whatever their particular need is. And if you start with just, say, the main homepage on the web for your university, and start Googling around and looking for how to access help, it's really difficult to do. And I think of like a library where anybody can walk up to the reference desk and ask a question. And we have the ability, the extent that we're able to understand, who the different players are, to help connect people. But that happens in myriad different ways with different players, and kind of with the understanding of, what is motivating them. So, for example, libraries, we're interested in stewardship of the scholarly record, and in advancing learning and research through building collections and helping people find and utilize those collections. But the research office, for example, they have expertise in knowledge of specific funders, and they're motivated by grant proposals being more competitive, and by researchers complying with regulations and with funder requirements. Our campus IT, they're very much they have expertise in high performance computing, in engineering storage systems, and writing software and high-speed networks and computational experience. And so, trying to be able to connect these things, it's a big challenge. But I do think what I put out there is I don't have like a silver bullet solution, but just that to consider your role as a librarian in helping researchers to be able to connect them to some of these things, and to not be afraid. If someone comes in and they need help that you can't provide, or that's not appropriate within scope for the library, to bring in other partners on campus or in whatever your organizational context might be.
Yeah. Thanks, Michael. Anything to add to that briefly, Natasha, before we close?
Yes, just briefly, there's actually quite a lot of interesting discussions happening around this topic at the moment, and I've popped in the chat window a blog post by Chris Erdman from North Carolina State Universities and some of his colleagues about how librarians can basically be partners in the research process. And he has actually developed a course called Data Science Training for Librarians, which he developed at Harvard. And there's a lot of discussion about what is the crossover between data librarians and data scientists that's happening right now. So we'll see how that evolves, because a lot of librarians as well are getting involved in library carpentry and data carpentry and becoming instructors, and that starts to go into the data science realm as well. However, I don't think it's for everyone either, and we may see some data scientist-oriented librarians and some librarians who are more providing more standard services for data. So we'll see how that evolves.
Right.
So maybe one last question. I mean, one thing which struck me in the comments is there was this question why, or there's, I mean, the observation that there's little information on costs of data management.
Yeah.
And this is, of course, a conversation point which comes up with the administrators now and then, or when it comes to proposals. Do you have any tips for this area? I mean, how could we support in this regard? So costs for data publishing, costs for data management, archiving.
Well, perhaps that's something we could put in the discussion right up from this webinar.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's do it that way.
Yeah. I think the same applies with the future of data journals, which is also, I think, a very interesting question. Yeah. I suggest that we sort of close the meeting, as we have scheduled from the webinar from 12 to 1300 hours. I think we could go on for at least
for a long time.
Another hour, but yeah, let's leave it here, and let's follow up with our discussion online. Thank you. I'm giving over now to Birgit to close this session.
Yes, thank you all for participating. Yeah, as said, there will be a little wrap-up in terms of a blog post regarding the questions, and I hope, and we hope, that you all enjoyed the webinar, and thank you again to Natasha and Michael for your patience with all the questions, and yeah, for your great presentation.
Yes.
So, a nice day to you all. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.